geography. It is power, it is commerce, it is food, it is fuel, it is life. The world saw the Strait of Hormuz become the center of confrontation between Iran and the United States. It saw the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding announced with Pakistan's mediation try to reopen that artery of global economy and halt a wider descent into war. The United States and Iran agreed to cease hostilities and reopen the strait, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas normally transits. What was the closing of Hormuz? Let us call it by its name. It was the weaponization of a waterway. It was the conversion of a maritime passage into an instrument of compulsion. It was an economic weapon deployed not by mushroom cloud, but by blockade, fear, insurance premiums, empty tankers, rising prices, and trembling markets. Just as no ceasefire and no peace can be achieved between the United States and Iran with the Strait of Hormuz shut, similarly, how can any ceasefire between India and Pakistan hold without the Indus Water Treaty being restored? From Hormuz, we must turn to the Indus, because what is true of the Strait of Hormuz is true with even greater intimacy and greater cruelty of the Indus Basin. A strait may carry the oil. A strait may carry the oil of nations. The Indus carries the life of nations. India had announced its intention to abandon the Indus Waters Treaty as part of their unjustified assault on Pakistan last summer. It is a war that is internationally recognized as one that India lost. Even India's greatest allies can't help but marvel at the number of planes downed by Pakistan. Pakistan, emerging victorious from this David versus Goliath scale conflict, has reshaped the geopolitics of the region. The concept of propping up India as a net security provider in the region has been abandoned, and the world has moved on. However, I must caution, while Pakistan has stuck to the ceasefire, which were to be discussed, whereas Pakistan has stuck to the terms of the ceasefire, India has not. There were clear and explicit terms of the ceasefire which were to be discussed at a meeting in a neutral location where all friction points were to be addressed. We were to return to the status ante in the meantime, which would of course include India returning to its obligations under the Indus Waters Treaty prior to this dispute. It has not. Therefore, a year on, it is a legitimate question for Pakistan to answer. Do we still abide by a ceasefire that leaves far too many questions unanswered? Just as one could not imagine warring parties agreeing to a ceasefire, let alone peace, without a free-flowing Strait of Hormuz, how can Pakistan be expected to sustain a ceasefire when India continues to pose an existential threat? Let there be no ambiguity in Islamabad, in New Delhi, in Washington, in Beijing, in London, at the United Nations. This is not a technical dispute. This is not a clerical quarrel between commissioners. This is not a matter of paperwork, hydrology, or administrative abeyance. This is the weaponization of water. The Indus Water Treaty was not a favor given to Pakistan. It was a solemn international settlement. It was brokered in the shadow of partition because the rivers of Punjab and Sindh could not be left to the mercy of anger. The World Bank states plainly that the treaty allocates the western rivers, the Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, to Pakistan, and the eastern rivers to India, while allowing each side limited uses on rivers allocated to the other. So where India says it will place this treaty in abeyance, India is not merely suspending meetings. It is striking at an international compact that has survived wars, crises, mobilizations, and generations of hostility. And what is the Indus to Pakistan? It is not a river on a map. It is our bread, it is our cotton, it is our wheat, it is our fields of Sindh, our orchards of Punjab, our waters of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, our channels of Balochistan. It is our farmer at dawn. It is our mothers drawing water, our children eating roti, our worker in the mill, our prayer before the harvest. To cut the Indus is not to pressure a government, it is to threaten a people. Pakistan has over 200 million souls. No state, no prime minister, no army, no court, no parliament, no political party, and no generation has the right to stand silent while the lifeline of those souls is placed under the shadow of coercion. We must therefore speak with the seriousness that this situation demands. Pakistan must treat every step towards the strangulation of its waters as a national security assault, not merely a diplomatic irritant, not as a footnote in a foreign ministry brief, not as another file to be moved from one desk to another. It must be treated as an attack on the foundations of the state. That does not mean that Pakistan seeks war. We do not seek war. We have buried too many sons. We have seen too much blood in this region. We know the price of adventurism. We know the tragedy of miscalculation. But peace is not surrender. Restraint is not paralysis. Diplomacy is not silence. And patience is not permission. If India wants the world to take its threat seriously, Pakistan must compel the world to take our survival seriously. Our message must be clear. Any move to block, divert, manipulate, or potentially politically control Pakistan's rightful waters will not be treated as routine engineering. Every survey, every tender, every canal proposal, every dam design, every concrete step towards changing the flow guaranteed to Pakistan must be treated as a strategic warning signal. It must trigger a whole of the state response, legal, diplomatic, economical, political, informational, national security preparedness, and even military response. Pakistan should not allow India to climb the ladder of coercion while we remain trapped at the bottom, issuing statements of concern that says the final strangulation of water is an existential threat, cannot remain silent when the strangulation is prepared, financed, designed, tendered, and normalized. A nation does not wake up only when the riverbed is dry. A nation wakes up when the first stone is moved to dam our future. It is only rational to ask, what are we doing in terms of military preparedness as India continues to pursue her stated path? But let me also say this. Pakistan must not make a single move that concedes India's illegal position. We must not behave as though India's decision is fait accompli. We must not build policy on the assumption that the treaty is dead. We must not rush to create downstream substitute dams in a way that tells the world India has succeeded, now Pakistan is adjusting. Or give the impression that we were victorious on the battlefield but have surrendered on the banks of the river. No. Pakistan's position must remain immovable. The treaty lives. India's obligations are live. Pakistan's rights live. The Indus does not become India's instrument because India has discovered the language of abeyance. Projects and dams already approved before India's unilateral decision should continue on their own merit. Pakistan must complete what Pakistan has already planned. We must strengthen our dams, reservoirs, barrages, canals, and flood management systems because Pakistan needs water security regardless of India's aggression. But let us be precise. There is a difference between strengthening Pakistan and accepting India's blackmail. There is a difference between national resilience and diplomatic surrender. There is a difference between preparing for scarcity and legitimizing theft. We must move on a war footing for water conservation, of course. We must modernize irrigation. We must reduce waste in canals. We must invest in drip irrigation, smart agriculture, lining where needed, telemetering, groundwater regulation, recycling, and urban water discipline. We must make every drop count, not because India has a right to steal our water, but because Pakistan has a duty to respect its own future. We must explore every source outside the scope of the treaty. Desalination of our coasts, water recycling for our cities, climate-resilient water storage, regional water cooperation, and even the long-term feasibility of bringing water from Central Asia through negotiated corridors and sovereign agreements. Let engineers dream, let planners calculate, let diplomats negotiate, and let the state act with imagination. But do not confuse resilience with retreat. The Indus Water Treaty must be defended in every forum: the World Bank, the United Nations, international courts, and arbitrary bodies, friendly capitals, Muslim capitals, Western capitals, African capitals, and Asian capitals. Pakistan must internationalize the principle, not merely the grievance, because the world now needs new law. International law has rules for sea. Straits used for international navigation are governed by transit passage principles, and ships and aircrafts enjoy a right of transit passage that shall not be impeded. International water law also rests on the equitable and reasonable utilization, prevention of significant harm, and prior notification of measures that may adversely affect other states' sharing of water courses. International humanitarian law recognizes that water installation and irrigation systems are indispensable for civilian survival. And the ICRC has warned that the deprivation of water as a method of warfare is strictly prohibited. Yet the age we are entering demands more. We need a new international convention against the weaponization of waterways. It must apply to maritime choke points like Hormuz, to transboundary rivers like the Indus. It must prohibit the use of civilian water dependency as a coercive instrument. It must create emergency injunctions against unilateral treaty suspensions. It must impose automatic international scrutiny on projects that threaten downstream survival. It must recognize that in a climate-stressed century, water coercion is not merely unfriendly conduct. It is aggression by other means. The 20th century feared the bomb, so the 21st century must also fear the faucet controlled by a hostile hand. And to our Indian neighbors, I say this: you cannot build greatness on the thirst of another people. You cannot call yourself a civilization while threatening another civilization's river. You cannot speak of democracy while placing millions under hydrological siege. You cannot invoke development while turning water into a weapon. The Indus is older than both our flags. It has seen empires come and go. It has seen kings, colonizers, conquerors, generals, viceroys, prime ministers, and presidents. They all passed. The river remained, and Pakistan will remain. We must understand the nature of the conflict before us. It is not confined to one front. It is not only a matter of borders. Pakistan is being targeted through proxies, through propaganda, through economic pressures, through attempts at diplomatic isolation, through hybrid warfare, through the politics of fear, and now through the politics of water. This is war by other means. When a state seeks to isolate you, destabilize you, blame you, bleed you, then threaten the river that sustains your people, you are already in a war of national survival. Whether the guns are firing every day or not, the only test is not the only test of war. The test is whether the life of the nation is being targeted. And today, the life of the nation is being targeted. So let us rise above party, above province, above faction, above the petty quarrels that have so often weakened us. The Indus does not belong to one government. It does not belong to one party. It does not belong to one province. It belongs to Pakistan. It belongs to history. Let there be unity in Parliament. Let there be clarity at GHQ. Let there be resolve in the Foreign Office. Let there be urgency across government. Let there be science in our university. Let there be sacrifice in our politics. And let there be discipline in our people. We do not ask for charity. We demand law. We do not ask for sympathy. We demand justice. We do not ask for permission to live. We assert our right to life. Pakistan must say to the world, the Indus cannot be held hostage. The treaty cannot be suspended by arrogance. The river cannot be turned into a weapon. The thirst of children cannot become the policy of a neighboring state. And Pakistan must say to India, do not mistake our divisions for weakness. Do not mistake our restraint for fear. Do not mistake our appeal to law for lack of resolve. We have survived partition. We have survived war. We have survived terror. We have survived floods. We have survived dictatorships, sanctions, conspiracies, and betrayals, and we are still here. The Indus made us patient. The Indus made us fertile. And the Indus made us stubborn. And if anyone believes that Pakistan will surrender the Sindhu, they do not know Pakistan. They do not know Sindh. They do not know Punjab. They do not know Balochistan. They do not know Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They do not know Kashmir or Gilgit-Baltistan. They do not know the people who have lived by these rivers for thousands and thousands of years. We want peace, but peace with dignity. We want dialogue, but dialogue under law. We want coexistence, but not submission. So from this seminar, from this city, from this moment, let a message go forth. Pakistan will defend its water, its people, its treaty, its sovereignty, and its future. The world should not pretend that the strangulation of the Indus is a technical dispute. It is in public literature on Pakistan's deterrence posture. Economic strangulation has long been treated as one of the gravest thresholds, and stopping the Indus has been understood as falling within this category. Therefore, when India weaponizes water, it is not merely violating a treaty, it is pushing South Asia towards the edge of strategic catastrophe. If we see an attack on our rivers as a military assault, we must respond militarily as well. Pakistan should escalate militarily at the tendering stage, mobilize at the construction stage, and proceed to conventional conflict. And if all else fails, our waters are truly cut off. The Indus is not negotiable. The Sindhu is not for surrender. Let the world understand the danger of what India has done. No power, however large, however arrogant, however intoxicated, could impose an existential defeat upon Pakistan. And what is more existential than water? A nation may survive sanctions. A nation may survive isolation. A nation may survive diplomatic pressures. But no nation can survive the deliberate strangulation of its rivers that feeds its fields, its children, and its future. This is why the Indus cannot be treated as an ordinary dispute. This is why the suspension of the Indus water treaties cannot be treated as diplomatic theater. This is why every capital in the world must understand the weaponization of the Indus is not a bureaucratic act, it is a strategic act. Pakistan has never hidden from the world that economic strangulation is among the greatest threats to its survival. Therefore, India must not be allowed to believe that it can climb step by step towards water strangulation while the world yawns, while institutions debate vocabulary, while diplomats search for softer phrases, and while Pakistan is expected to remain quiet until the riverbed is dry. No. A nation does not defend its life only at the final moment. A nation defends its life at the first warning. Every move towards coercive control of Pakistan's waters must be understood as an escalation in a national security crisis. Every declaration, every project, every administrative step, every attempt to normalize unilateral control over flows guaranteed to Pakistan must be answered with seriousness, unity, preparedness, and the full force of sovereign resolve. We do not seek war, but we will not accept slow motion aggression. We do not seek catastrophe, but we will not allow catastrophe to be prepared in the language of engineering. We do not seek confrontation, but no one should mistake restraint for surrender. The purpose of deterrent is to prevent disaster, not to invite it. But deterrence collapses when red lines are blurred, when existential threats are minimized, when aggressors are allowed to test the patience of nations, drop by drop, brick by brick, canal by canal, and dam by dam. So Pakistan must speak clearly. The Indus is not a pressure point. The Indus is not a bargaining chip. The Indus is not a weapon to be placed in India's hands. The Indus is a lifeline of Pakistan. And any attempt to turn that lifeline into a noose must be treated as a threat to the survival of our state. This is the message that Pakistan must deliver to India. This is the message that Pakistan must deliver to the world, not in panic, not in hysteria, not in recklessness, but with the cold clarity of a people who know what is at stake. Because peace in South Asia will not be preserved by pretending water coercion is harmless. Peace will be preserved only when India understands that the rivers of Pakistan cannot be touched without shaking the foundations of regional stability. The world has learned to fear the missiles. It must now learn the fear of the weaponization of water. The 21st century may live under the shadow of water strangulation. And if the international community does not build new law against the weaponization of waterways, then every river, every strait, every canal, every maritime artery, every downstream nation will one day become hostage to the ambitions of an upstream power. Pakistan must therefore lead the argument, not as a beggar, not as a victim, not as a state pleading for sympathy, warning the world that the path India has opened is a path towards catastrophe. The treaty lives. Pakistan's rights live. The Sindhu lives, and Pakistan will not surrender the Sindhu. If the entire water supply of a country is cut off, what is that except destruction of a nation by other means? Water strangulation destroys them by thirst, hunger, crop failure, disease, migration, and social collapse. The mushroom cloud appears in one instant. The dead river kills in slow motion. But the strategic meaning is the same. The life of the nation is being attacked. Therefore, Pakistan must not allow the world to hide behind technical language. India will call it a treaty dispute. India will call it administrative abeyance. India will call it hydropower. India will call it development. India will call it a canal, a tender, a study, a survey, an engineering decision. No. A tender is not merely a tender when it is attached to the strangulation of a people. A dam is not merely a dam when it is built on the throat of a nation. A canal is not merely a canal when it proposes to convert Pakistan's lifeline into India's lever of coercion. Pakistan has publicly described attempts to stop or divert its rightful use of water as an act of war. then let us draw the necessary conclusion. If the final act, the cutting off of Pakistan's waters, is an existential assault, then the steps leading up to that final act cannot be treated as routine. The road to catastrophe is not innocent merely because the catastrophe has not yet arrived. The enemy does not become dangerous only when the last gate is shut. He becomes dangerous when he surveys the site, when he funds the design, awards the tender, pours the concrete, and normalizes the right to decide whether Pakistanis shall drink or not. A nation that waits until the riverbed is dry has waited too long. That is why Pakistan's response must be graduated, visible, and sovereign. India must be made to understand that there is no cost-free climb up the ladder of water coercion. Every step towards the weaponization of the Indus must produce a corresponding elevation in Pakistan's national response: political, diplomatic, legal, economic, informational, defensive, and strategic. We do not seek war, but we must recognize war when it is being prepared against us. It is reckless to tell India that it may keep advancing towards Pakistan's existential threshold while Pakistan remains confined to press releases and appeals for understanding. Deterrence fails when red lines become academic. Deterrence fails when adversaries believe he can move step by step, brick by brick, file by file, until the unthinkable becomes normal. Deterrence survives only when the adversary understands that every movement toward the red line carries consequence, risk, and national resistance. This is not a call for panic. This is a call for seriousness. This is not a call for adventurism. It is a call for clarity. This is not a call for Pakistan to abandon law. It is a call for Pakistan to make law, diplomacy, preparedness, and deterrence speak in one voice. India placed the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance as part of Operation Sindhu. Pakistan has treated the suspension as unlawful while preparing legal action and warning that waters diversions would be an act of war. So let the world hear this from Pakistan. We will not allow India to redefine aggression as engineering. We will not allow India to redefine coercion as development. We will not allow India to redefine treaty violation as national security. And we will not allow India to place its hand on the throat of the Indus and then ask Pakistan to behave as though nothing strategic has happened. The Indus is not an ordinary river. It is the civilizational artery of Pakistan. It feeds our fields. It sustains our cities, powers our economy, and binds our federation. To threaten the Indus is to threaten Pakistan itself. And when Pakistan itself is threatened, Pakistan must respond as a state whose survival is at stake. Not tomorrow, not after the last drop, not after the world has held 20 conferences and issued 30 statements of concern. Pakistan must respond at the beginning of escalation, because that is where deterrence either succeeds or dies. The message to India must be unmistakable. You cannot suspend the treaty and expect normal relations. You cannot prepare structures of coercion and expect strategic quiet. You cannot turn water into weapon and expect Pakistan to treat it as paperwork. You cannot march towards an existential threshold and demand that Pakistan remain diplomatically polite. The world has just seen what happens when a waterway becomes a weapon. The Strait of Hormuz is called an artery of the global economy because energy flows through it. The Indus is more than that. It is an artery of national survival. If the closure of Hormuz can shake markets, then the strangulation of the Indus can shake region. That is why the world needs new international law against the weaponization of water. Whether it is a strait, a canal, a river, or a basin, a waterway that sustains civilians must not be converted into a weapon. The law must recognize that in the age of climate stress, water aggression is as destabilizing as military aggression. Pakistan must lead that argument, but Pakistan must also understand that law without power is a petition. Power without law is chaos. We need both. We need the legal case, the diplomatic case, the humanitarian case, the climate case, and the deterrence case. Above all, we need national unity. The Indus belongs to the farmer of Sindh, the grower of Punjab, the worker of Karachi, the family of Balochistan, the mountains of Pakhtunkhwa, and is the future of every Pakistani child. We build resilience because Pakistan must be strong, not because India has the right to steal. We preserve water because our future demands wisdom, not because we accept blackmail. We prepare for scarcity, but we do not legitimize strangulation. The treaty lives, Pakistan's rights live, the Sindhu lives. And any state that imagines Pakistan will surrender the Sindhu has misunderstood our history, our politics, our people, and our resolve. We are a nation born of struggle. We have endured wars and sanctions and floods and terrorism and isolation and betrayal. We are still here. As long as the Sindhu flows through the body of Pakistan, Pakistan will not bow. Let no one misunderstand us. Pakistan's deterrence does not begin when the last drop has vanished. Deterrence begins when the adversary first moves towards the strangulation of a nation. If total water denial is an existential threat, then the path towards total water denial is not innocent. A survey, a tender, a canal, a dam, a diversion, a legal fiction called abeyance, each must be treated not as paperwork, but as movement towards that strategic threshold. Pakistan must make the world understand that the Indus is not a bargaining chip. It is the bloodstream of our republic. To threaten it is to threaten the survival of our state. And when survival is threatened, all instruments of national power become relevant. Diplomacy, law, economy, public mobilization, defense preparedness, and strategic deterrence. We are not discussing irrigation. We are discussing coercion. We are not discussing canals. We are discussing the deliberate manufacture of famine, migration, economic collapse, and national paralysis. A weaponized river can destroy a country in slow motion. The life of a people is under attack. Therefore, India must be told clearly, do not climb this ladder and imagine that Pakistan will remain at the bottom. Do not move brick by brick towards our strangulation and expect only memoranda from Islamabad. Do not mistake Pakistan's appeal for international law for strategic helplessness. We seek peace but not surrender. We seek law but not helplessness. We seek restraint but not national suicide. The Sindhu is not India's weapon. The Sindhu is Pakistan's lifeline, and any attempt to turn that lifeline into a noose must be answered with the full seriousness of a nation defending its existence. The Indus is not merely an artery of Pakistan's economy. It is the bloodstream of Pakistan itself. The Indus is not a river on the map. The Indus is Pakistan in motion. And therefore, India places Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance when India threatens to divert waters that sustain Pakistan. When Indian ministers speak of taking water that flows to Pakistan and sending it elsewhere. This is not paperwork. This is not engineering. This is not administration. This is the weaponization of water. Let no one in New Delhi, Islamabad, Washington, Beijing, London, Riyadh, Tehran, and the United Nations pretend that this is a normal dispute. Pakistan has said that any attempt to divert the flow of water belonging to Pakistan is an act of war. The phrase act of war must not be uttered casually, but once uttered, it must not be hollow. If water strangulation is an act of war, then steps towards water strangulation cannot be treated as acts of peace. If the final cutting off of Pakistan's water would be an existential assault, then the road to that assault is not innocent. The survey is not innocent. The tender is not innocent. The canal is not innocent. The dam is not innocent. The legal fiction of abeyance is not innocent. A noose does not become dangerous only when the neck is broken. It becomes dangerous when it is tied. Therefore, let us say clearly what others are afraid to say. To cut off the waters of Pakistan is to place Pakistan under strategic attack. If the life of the nation is under assault, then Pakistan cannot wait until the riverbed is dry before it wakes up. A state that waits for the last drop has already surrendered the first principle of deterrence. Deterrence is not a speech after defeat. Deterrence is a warning that prevents defeat. So the argument before Pakistan is simple. Every Indian step towards coercive control of Pakistan's waters must be treated as strategic escalation. Every legal fiction, every engineering project, every attempt to normalize unilateral power over Pakistan's lifeline must be answered by corresponding elevation and escalation in Pakistan's national security posture. Not hysteria, not adventurism, not empty shouting, but seriousness, visible seriousness, sovereign seriousness. India must not be allowed to climb the ladder of water coercion while Pakistan is kept at the bottom, issuing press releases. India must not be allowed to move brick by brick towards our strangulation where the world calls for restraint only from the victim. India must not be allowed to convert hydrology into hostility and then hide behind the vocabulary of development. A dam is not merely a dam when it is built on the throat of a nation. A canal is not merely a canal when it is designed to make a people thirsty. A treaty violation is not merely a treaty violation when the treaty protects the lifeline of more than 200 million people. Let the world hear this. Pakistan does not seek war, but Pakistan must recognize when war is being prepared against us. We do not seek confrontation, but we will not accept national suicide as the price of appearing reasonable. The international community must stop treating water aggression as a lesser form of aggression. Whether it is the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, or the Indus, waterways that sustain civilian life and global stability cannot be turned into weapons of coercion. There must be a new international convention against the weaponization of waterways, a convention that says no state may use civilian water dependence as a weapon, a convention that says no upstream power may hold a downstream people hostage, a convention that says no maritime checkpoint may be closed to blackmail, a convention that says water is not a weapon, a convention that says thirst is not diplomacy, a convention that says famine is not statecraft. We must take the climate case to every summit. We must take the diplomatic case to every capital. And Pakistan must make the deterrence case to every strategist who thinks South Asia can survive casual experiments with the Indus. The treaty lives, Pakistan's rights live, the Indus lives. Projects already approved before India's unilateral actions, our reservoirs, our dams, our barrages, our flood systems, our canals, our capacity stores, all must be strengthened because Pakistan needs water security. We are strengthening Pakistan because we have a duty to survive. Resilience is not surrender. Preparedness is not acceptance. Conversion is not concession. Pakistan must prepare for scarcity without legitimizing strangulation. And let us be honest about the wider war being waged against Pakistan. This is not only a water dispute. This is one front in a broader campaign. Pressure at the borders, proxy violence, propaganda, failed attempts at diplomatic isolation, economic coercion, hybrid warfare, and now the threat of hydrological coercion. This is a war by other means. A bullet is not the only weapon. A blockade is a weapon, a sanction can be a weapon, a lie can be a weapon, a proxy can be a weapon, a river can be made into a weapon. And when the river is the Indus, the weapon is aimed at the heart of Pakistan. So let us rise above party, above province, above faction, above the smallness that has too often made Pakistan vulnerable. We do not ask for charity, we demand law. Pakistan was not created to accept thirst as our destiny. The Indus is older than both our flags. It has seen empires come and go. They have all passed. The river remains. Pakistan will remain. The Indus is not negotiable. The Sindhu is not for surrender. Marsu, Marsu, Sindhu na desu. Thank you.
چیئرمین بلاول بھٹو زرداری بین الاقوامی سیمینار سے خطاب کر رہے تھے۔ انہوں نے کہا کہ پانی محض تکنیکی تنازع نہیں، قومی سلامتی کے مسئلے کے طور پر دیکھا جانا چاہیے۔ پاکستان کے آبی حقوق کو نقصان پہنچانے کی ہر کوشش کا قومی سطح پر جواب دیا جائے گا۔ پاکستان امن کا خواہاں ہے، اپنے عوام کے بنیادی حقوق اور آبی مفادات پر کوئی سمجھوتا نہیں کریں گے۔ کروڑوں عوام کے حق آب کے تحفظ پر پوری پاکستانی قوم متحد ہے۔ پانی کا سیاسی دباؤ یا بطور ہتھیار استعمال بین الاقوامی قوانین اور معاہدوں کے منافی ہے۔ سنتاس معاہدے کے تحت پاکستان کے حصے کے پانی کا تحفظ یقینی بنایا جائے گا۔ پاکستان کی جانب سے اس بات کی پہلے ہی نشاندہی کی گئی ہے کہ ہم اپنے حق کا دفاع کرنا جانتے ہیں۔ پاکستان امن کا خواہاں ہے اور سنتاس معاہدے کے تحت پاکستان کے حصے کے پانی کا تحفظ یقینی بنایا جائے گا۔ بلاول بھٹو زرداری نے کہا کہ پانی محض تکنیکی تنازع نہیں ہے، قومی سلامتی کے مسئلے کے طور پر اسے دیکھا جانا چاہیے۔ پاکستان کے آبی حقوق کو نقصان پہنچانے کی ہر کوشش کا قومی سطح پر جواب دیا جائے گا۔ پاکستان امن کا خواہاں ہے، اپنے عوام کے بنیادی حقوق اور آبی مفادات پر کوئی سمجھوتا نہیں کریں گے۔ انڈیا کی جانب سے بار بار پاکستان کے حق پر ڈاکہ ڈالنے کی کوشش کی گئی، سنتاس معاہدے کی خلاف ورزی کی گئی، لیکن پاکستان اپنے موقف پر آج بھی قائم ہے اور اپنے حق کا دفاع کرنا جانتا ہے۔ سنتاس معاہدے کے تحت پاکستان کے حصے کے پانی کا تحفظ کا یقینی بنایا جائے گا۔ پانی کا سیاسی دباؤ یا بطور ہتھیار استعمال بین الاقوامی قوانین اور معاہدوں کے منافی ہے۔ کروڑوں عوام کے حق آب کے تحفظ پر پوری پاکستانی قوم متحد ہے، اپنے عوام کے بنیادی حقوق اور آبی مفادات پر کوئی سمجھوتا نہیں کریں گے۔ چیئرمین بلاول بھٹو زرداری نے بین الاقوامی سیمینار سے خطاب کیا، جس میں انہوں نے کہا کہ پانی محض تکنیکی تنازع نہیں بلکہ قومی سلامتی کے مسئلے کے طور پر اسے دیکھا جانا چاہیے۔ پاکستان امن کا خواہاں ہے، ہندوستان کی جانب سے بارہا سنتاس معاہدے کی خلاف ورزی کی گئی، لیکن پاکستان اپنے موقف پر آج بھی قائم ہے اور سنتاس معاہدے کے تحت پاکستان کے حصے کے پانی کا تحفظ ہماری جانب سے یقینی بنایا جائے گا۔ پاکستان کے آبی حقوق کو نقصان پہنچانے کی ہر کوشش کا قومی سطح پر جواب پاکستان کی طرف سے دیا جائے گا۔ پاکستان امن کا خواہاں ہے، اپنے عوام کے بنیادی حقوق اور آبی مفادات پر کوئی سمجھوتا نہیں کریں گے۔ پانی پر ڈاکہ نہیں ڈالا جا سکتا۔ کروڑوں عوام کے حق آب کے تحفظ پر پوری پاکستانی قوم متحد ہے۔ پانی کا سیاسی دباؤ یا بطور ہتھیار استعمال بین الاقوامی قوانین اور معاہدوں پر منافی ہے۔ سنتاس معاہدے کے تحت پاکستان کے حصے کے پانی کا تحفظ یقینی بنایا جائے گا۔ پاکستان کی جانب سے بہت بار ہندوستان کی جانب سے سنتاس معاہدے کی خلاف ورزی کرنے کی کوشش کی گئی، لیکن پاکستان اپنے موقف پر قائم ہے۔ سنتاس معاہدے کی خلاف ورزی نہیں کی جا سکتی۔ ہم بارہا بین الاقوامی سطح پر اسے اجاگر کرتے رہیں گے۔ اس مسئلے کو اب حل ہونا چاہیے۔ چیئرمین بلاول بھٹو زرداری نے بین الاقوامی سیمینار سے خطاب کیا، جس میں انہوں نے کہا کہ پانی محض تکنیکی تنازع نہیں بلکہ قومی سلامتی کے مسئلے کے طور پر اسے دیکھا جانا چاہیے۔
Thank you very much. I'm very